Decades spent in the grayscale port, sleeping in the rooms that smelled of lime and diesel smoke. I chased the line where the water meets the sky, only to find the horizon is a joke. Told in 1,000 roadside bars, the same cracked glass, the same distant stars. I've walked enough miles to know the geometry of the road is just a circle carrying a heavy stagnant load. Town with the sight in my head of the stagnant weight of the valley air. I looked for a savior, but all I found was the ghost of the storm following me around. The river in the valley is a muddy big flow, carrying the broken things that the seasons outflow. It doesn't have an answer, it doesn't have a name. It's just dissolving the glory and the shame. I'm letting go of the shore. I don't want to be the captain anymore. Into the black absolute where the silence is deep. Into the current I was never meant to keep. My addiction, my mourning, my failures, my pride, the only honest friends who never left my side. They are the rain on the window, the cold in the bone, the only language I have ever really known. No redemption waiting in the weeds by the bank, no holy water in the vessel that sank. Just a recognition of the constant rain, the rhythmic's heavy pulse of a permanent stain. I walked inside and turned the heavy brass key, locking out the world so it can't find me. No lights in the kitchen, no fire in the grate, just the quiet accounting of the hours and the weight. The water is rising through the floorboards and the seams, drowning out the residue of the starched and steady dreams. The current is home, the muddy water, the black absolute. Everything we love is just the river's fruit. No more fighting, no more breath, just the rhythmic logic of a voluntary death. Go to wherever knows, dissolving, black absolutes. The odometer is etched into the wrinkles of my knuckles, a heavy gauge accumulation of the miles and the years. I've seen the world through the double pane glass of a pressurized cabin, watching the cities dissolve into a grid of cold and industrial fears. The trains provided a rhythm, a mechanical heartbeat for the hollow, showing me the end was just a line that kept retreating in the grave. I chased a destination that wasn't on the atlas or the schedule, spending the gold of my youth on a ticket to the middle of the day. Every ghost stop buried is dim, the 60-watt bulb in the hallway, until the furniture is just a collection of shadows I can't recognize. I've unhooked the latch from the expectations of the believers, closing the shutters on the hunger of their eyes to miss their guile. Anguish is the only weather that hasn't lied to my bones. The storm that broke the structure I've reached the point where the silence has a physical volume, a density of absence that the lungs have learned to prefer. That maybe tomorrow was a currency that went out of fashion, leaving me as the man I'm no longer sure that I were. I've retired into the vacuum, into the starched and steady quiet, tucking the ruins of my history deep inside a woolen coat. There's no cinematic glory in the way the light is fading, just the slow motion sinking of a leak-saturated boat. The mirror is a blueprint of a structural collapse, a map of the ravines and the sensory jagged traps. I'm looking at a stranger who is ready for the deep, surrendering the secrets that I wasn't meant to keep. Not a hero, not a martyr, just a shadow on the move, with no silver to gather and nothing left to prove. Anguish is the only weather that hasn't lied to my bones, the storm that broke the structure just to build a house of stone. It's the skeleton I've grown, the architecture of the egg, the only honest promise that the gravity couldn't break. I'm leaning into the trap, prepping for the final saltwater long, singing the anthem that the distance has always, always flowing toward the sea of forgetting. The current is a heavy, bleeding blue, leaving the starched shirts and the things I had to do. The bones are a cage, the shadow is free, dissolving into the math of the vast and the vacancy. Stood where the bank meets the heavy gauge grade, watching the water take the labels away. The old man in the scroll said the river would shift, but he missed the weight of the interior rift. You don't step in twice, not because of the flow, but because of the things that you learn to let go. The second time under the pulse is a lie. The man on the shore has already said his goodbye. The serpent is moving, a thick liquid lead, rearranging the stones in the floor of the bed. Life is a shutter that's closing too slow, a long steady fade that the believers don't know. Light is a gap, a brief jagged pause between the first breath and the hunger of jaw. The current is hungry for the names and the bone, and the only true friend is the silence I've grown. The storm wasn't a wall, it was a map to the still. The final unmaking my seasons in the teeth of a gale, thinking the friction was a way to prevail. But the lightning was a tutor, the thunder a key, locking the borders between the world and me. Solitude is a structure, a house made of rain, heat industrial by product of the years and the stain. I walk to the porch and I turn the brass bolt, a final withdrawal, a silent revolt. The vacuum is calling, a non-existent room where the ego is buried in the salt and the gloom. Entropy is the dead and the only honest sound, the sound of the memory hitting the ground. Truth isn't a mountain, there's cinematic peak. It's the quiet of the wreckage for the tired and the weak. Flesh is just cargo on a sinking design, leaching its color into the brackish and the brine. No return on the ticket, no north in the eye, just the cold unguiding of a lead-colored sky. The current is hungry for the names in the bone, and the only true friend is the silence I've grown. The storm wasn't a wall, it was a map to the still, the final unmaking of a hollowed out will. It's a manifesto written in the rust and the silt, on who can go from the architecture we built. Accepting the ruin, accepting the deep, the only true promise I was able to keep. The second entry, the water is black. There isn't a bridge that can carry me back. Ruin is the anchor, ruin is the home. The breath is a debt to the silt and the foam. Fade to black, fade to black, fade to a sharp ozone stain, a metallic taste of the rain that won't fall. The sky is a sheet of heavy-duty leaves, pressing the river against the mud wall. The water is an oily black mirror film, swallowing the light in a slow motion green. There are no birds in the skeletal trees, no music left for the ghosts to leave. Just the grave, low hum of the current's throat. Indifferent to the wreckage, it's keeping afloat. lonely silhouette against the grayscale bank, a house of hollowed rooms where the history sang. No furniture to hold the weight of the years, just the dry wooden click as the latch clears. That sound is a bullet in the airless hall, the final punctuation against the drywall. The humidity is an intruder, a slow motion thief, crawling through the timber to the center of the grief. It's in the floor. Its frantic, jagged noise, leaving the residue of the broken toys. In its place is a cold that refuses to move, with no silver to gather and nothing to prove. Wait in the shadows for the pitch to arrive, the only way to know that you're still half alive. The river is a conveyor of the lost and the gone, sailing through the midnight to a dead-ended dawn. It's a static cold, a terminal breath, a sanctuary built on a voluntary death. The river is a promise that nothing returns, leaving no embers for the memory that burns. Tied to the floorboards, damp and deep, guarding the silence I was meant to keep. The oily mirror, the indifferent flow, with nowhere left for the spirit to go. Nothing comes back. Watching the silver of the bridge turn to lead. The map on the dash is a jagged edge, history creased by the thumbprints of the rusted and the red. A topography of every wrong turn I ever took, stained by the iron of a story I can't unwrite. The distance is finished, the compass is a ghost, lost in the center of the trail night. The roar beneath the girders is a gravel-throated hum, the only confidant that's waiting for the end to come. A low-frequency secret A heavy gauge sound, pulling the marrow through the skin of the ground. The river is a black ledger where the ink never stays, swallowing the minutes and the dead of the days. No rescue in the rafters, no light at the shore, just the timber of the shack and the closing of the door. From the black absolute, there is no return, no accounting for the bridges I managed to burn. The silence is the lock, the river is the key. I stepped into the case, breathed the wood rot in the gloom, taking my seat in the windowless room. I looked through the fester at the vanishing tracks, watching the water peel the salt from the cracks. The danger isn't hunting in the wind or the rain, it's a dark hospitality and numbing of the pain. A charcoal invitation, a velvet can of dread, smoothing the wrinkles in the architecture of my head. The storm is a curtain, a thick wall delay, a sovereign protection for the things I can't say. I'm unlearning the language of the maybe and soon, underneath the cold eye of a lead-colored moon. The water is a solvent for the name and the debt, washing out the features I haven't mastered.